These tariffs will affect every single person. Even if they don't think they're tariffed in their sector, it's going to indirectly affect them.
Bracing for the impact of Donald Trump's tariff threat.
The Premier's projection and his plans to protect the province. Good evening. Doug Ford says 500,000 jobs are at stake.
It's his most ominous warning yet and comes as we learn more about the efforts to defend Canadian interests. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us live with the details. Siobhan.
Well, the Premier welcomed the federal finance minister at Queen's Park today. No details out of their meeting about what the plan of attack for tariffs looks like, but both levels of government are resolved to work together.
They fabricate or make the chips.
The Premier is laying out a worrying economic picture for Ontario if Donald Trump slaps tariffs on Canadian exports to the U.S.
It's not going to be good. I'll tell you that right now.
Citing numbers provided by his cabinet ministers, Ford warns with tariffs,
it could cost 500,000 jobs. This is serious. It's unprecedented.
And there was a caucus meeting.
Dropping in on Queen's Park, the federal minister of finance wouldn't engage in speculation about how deep job losses could cut across the country.
It doesn't serve any purpose. I get that everybody is imagining complicated circumstances.
LeBlanc and Ford got together on the eve of a meeting between the country's premiers and prime minister, a chance to talk about tackling the tariff threat head on and what comes after.
If the American government takes this decision, our obligation is to work together and to support the economy of the country, but also to respond in a firm, unified way.
Ford has mused about spending tens of billions of dollars to keep the economy chugging post-tariffs, a spend he feels Ontarians should get to have their say on.
He's talking about an early election any day now. And that is exactly what we don't need in this province right now. We do not need more instability and insecurity.
And opposition party leaders say they are willing to collaborate.
Opposition leaders have supported the Premier in times of crisis before. We've all come together under COVID when tens of millions, hundreds of millions were spent. Perhaps even billions, and we will come together and do that again.
Ford stresses he hasn't decided whether or not to trigger an early election, wanting to see how things play out after Trump returns to the White House. Ford doesn't agree that he would create a leadership vacuum in Ontario if he were to call that early vote during this tariff fight. He seems to believe that he can do his job as Premier while campaigning. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Also tonight, the race to replace Trudeau sees two potential contenders opt out. The field narrowing around some big players and a young MP preparing to put her name forward.
But first, defending a significant tax increase for a growing city.
A nearly 7% hike revealed in yesterday's proposed budget. Today, the mayor was out selling the spending plan. CTV's Natalie Johnson is at City Hall with the details tonight. Natalie.
Well, Michelle, Torontonians have now had a day to digest the news of another substantial tax hike on the table for a second year in a row. The mayor facing some tough questions today about whether she's asking too much of taxpayers.
A lot of Torontonians are a little astonished that they're going to have to be out of pocket for that.
I hear you.
Mayor Olivia Chow on the defensive on the radio this morning, the day after unveiling a proposed 6.9% property tax hike for 2025.
I think there's going to be a lot of pushback from ratepayers and others on this budget. So
the $5
you're prepared to fight.
Increase, a $5 increase each week. Right, $5.20 increase on average.
That average cost is based on a home assessed at $692,000, whose owners would pay $268 more a year on top of last year's historically high 9.5% increase.
We're repairing the damage that was done for so many years of property tax freezes, property taxes below the rate of inflation. We can't get ahead of where we are if we don't turn the fiscal ship around.
As for where the money goes, a 5.8% increase in TTC service hours and a fare freeze. 100 traffic agents and 276 additional frontline police, paramedics and firefighters. expanded Sunday library hours for 70 branches, and food programs for 31,000 youth in camps and 8,000 students.
The mayor's proposal here has us wading into other jurisdictions, starting to operate programs within the public school system, and that's just historically not been accommodated for on a property tax base. So at the end of the day, that's why people are seeing their taxes go up at 3 times the rate of inflation.
What you're spending on is, as you say, to make life more affordable for people. But in order to fund that, you're asking people to give more money in taxation. So that actually makes life less affordable for an awful lot of people.
The mayor now has 4 weeks to convince her colleagues and her critics that higher taxes make the city more affordable.
It is about a week, each week, about a price of a Big Mac in terms of the increase on average.
As the battle begins over who benefits from this budget. Now, Chow's team has been pointing out that Mayor John Tory raised taxes by 7% in 2023, though worth pointing out that at that time, that was in line with the rate of inflation. Reporting live at City Hall, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. Still ahead, frozen over and fit for winter fun or at risk of falling through? As we dip back into the deep freeze, expert advice to hopefully avoid another fatal incident this winter.
A live look outside as we take a first look at the forecast. We were treated to bright sunshine on this Tuesday, but nothing in the way of warmth. Face-freezing temperatures coupled with a wicked wind chill. I'm sure it's frigid down there on the ice. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Cold and getting colder?
Well, somewhat, Michelle. It is going to be another cold day tomorrow, but it won't be quite as cold as it was today. Here's the thing. It is a bit of a temperature roller coaster the next week here, and it will be colder than this in the long range. Right now it is -8 degrees, wind chill -17. That's how it's felt all day long here, thanks in part to, once again, some very gusty winds out of the west, at one point gusting upwards of 50, 60 kilometers per hour. There is a winter weather travel advisory in place for Newmarket, Georgina, and northern Durham region as a result of these lake effect bands that continue to impact southern Ontario. Overnight tonight will drop to a low of -11, wind chill -18. Lots to talk about when it comes to your forecast. For now, though, Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. We turn to a warning about bodies of water in the GTA. With fluctuating temperatures from extreme cold to record highs, it is made for treacherous ice conditions. The CTV News chopper captured this scene over Grenadier Pond at High Park this morning. Skating rinks have been cleared despite a warning from emergency crews that the ice may not be safe. And CTV's Jessica Smith joins us now from the Toronto Fire and Marine Station 334 with more on the do's and don'ts when it comes to ice safety. Jess.
Nathan, despite it being cold outside today, it's been a relatively mild start to the winter season. Nearly 0% of Lake Ontario has its ice coverage according to Environment Canada, and the same goes for a number of ponds in the GTA. Now, Toronto Fire want to stress and remind people it is not safe or advised to skate on unmonitored ice. A man did unfortunately fall through the ice and passed away last week after skating on the lake at the Toronto Islands. I spoke to Acting Deputy Fire Chief Steve Darling earlier today, and he said there is no such thing as 100% safe ice.
No, ice is never 100% safe, especially when you're walking on it. We have to give it enough time to freeze, usually about a week or so. You're going to need about 4 to 6 inches for walking on it, 8 to 12 inches for any sort of a light vehicle or activity where there's going to be a lot of people on it to hold the weight of the people.
Acting Deputy Fire Chief Darling says the safest way to enjoy winter skating is to stick to monitored rinks, outdoor and indoor, that are monitored by the city or your local municipality. For now, I'll send things back inside. Reporting live, I'm Jessica Smith.
Thank you, Jess. Good to know. Appreciate it. We have some breaking news to share with you tonight. Police and emergency crews are on the scene of a violent robbery at a Scarborough mall. There were reports of suspects with hammers smashing jewelry store glass at the Golden Mile Plaza. CTV's John Musselman is live at the scene at Victoria Park and Eglinton with more. John.
Well, Michelle, we heard from witnesses today that about 3:30, 3 men, suspects entered this mall here with hammers, and they started smashing the glass inside a kiosk, a jewelry store, Daniel's Jewelry Kiosk. That's in the middle of the corridor of the mall here. So this all happened very quickly, according to witnesses. They were able to smash through the glass. I saw the glass, it's quite shattered. And they stole some items, and then took off, believed, in a car that may have been waiting nearby. Now, police are on the scene here. They're gathering some forensic evidence. The kiosk has been taped off. The mall remains open right now, but that area has been sealed off. Here's what a witness told us who operates a business right next door to where this happened.
Well, basically, I heard the noise, banging noise that breaking the glasses on the jewelry store. And then immediately I see they're running, and security is trying to chase them, and other civilian also trying to get hold of them. But they could not grab any of them.
You getting fed up hearing about this and now seeing it twice in 6 months?
Well, it's just frustrating, scary, and these innocent people are terrified because they don't want to see this.
We know there's been a rash of these smash and grab robberies. That witness did tell us, though, he thinks he saw what looked like a replica firearm, as well as at least 2 hammers that were used in this robbery. Reporting live from the scene, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, John. Meanwhile, in York Region, armed robberies and violent home invasions have been a growing problem.
Today, a renewed effort to crack down on the crime. CTV's Mike Walker joins us live with the details. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, January is Crime Stoppers Month, and today the hold-up squad revealed nearly a dozen of its most wanted suspects.
Hello, I called 911 right now. I called 911, okay? I called.
Disturbing surveillance video shows the violent extent criminals will go to. From a series of armed spa robberies to an attempted carjacking in Markham where the victim was assaulted, and a home invasion in Nobleton where police say the suspect shot and seriously injured a neighbor who attempted to intervene. Many of these suspects still at large.
These are brazen incidents that are occurring in the safety of people's homes.
Crime Stoppers in York Regional Police revealing the hold-up squad's most wanted in connection with these violent crimes. Investigators are still trying to identify some of the suspects who are mainly wanted for armed home invasions. In one case in Vaughan, officers were confronted by as many as 10 suspects. This wild dash cam video shows them attempting to evade police.
And it highlights what uniformed members are dealing with day in and day out on the road. As you've seen in one of the videos, the first 2 responding officers, the situation that they were faced with to make a split-second decision on how they were going to react when they were confronted with 2 stolen vehicles and up to 10 suspects.
Other suspects are known to police, including 19-year-old Aidan Murray for 5 armed spa robberies, Javon Clark Cameron for a carjacking, and Gianni Zale Singh Sidhu, who is wanted for this brazen carjacking at a Newmarket gas station while the victim was still pumping it with gas.
Sidhu had been released from custody after a bail hearing less than an hour before the incident occurred.
Investigators and Crime Stoppers hope by highlighting these crimes, it will generate tips leading to arrests, pointing to the success of the Crime Stoppers program that in 2024 received more than 3,100 tips and resulted in 103 arrests, 445 charges in connection with 81 cases.
Tips led us to significant arrests, recovery of property, recovery of drugs. We have seen significant levels of increased violence. It's more important now, if not any time, for people to call if they have information.
Crime Stoppers also announcing today that it will be ramping up its awareness and education campaigns in the community. That includes a new social media campaign it will be launching to combat sexploitation of teens. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. To a developing story, Toronto Police's bomb disposal unit is working to remove explosive materials located on the Leslie Street spit. Police were called to Tommy Thompson Park around 2:30 this afternoon after explosive materials were located. The explosive disposal unit, as well as the ETF and a hazmat team, were called in. A controlled detonation is set to be conducted. Police say there's no risk to public safety. They did not specify the type of explosive material that was found.
More now on our top story, the looming threat of American tariffs. The relationship between Canada and the U.S. will be the focus of a federal cabinet retreat in Quebec next Monday and Tuesday. The Prime Minister's office says it will focus on defending Canada's interests and boosting ties with the U.S. Cabinet ministers will discuss bolstering cross-border trade, reinforcing supply chains, and creating jobs in both countries.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump says he'll form a new government agency to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenue from foreign sources. It will be called the External Revenue Service. The president-elect says it will be created on Monday, the day he is inaugurated. U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency currently collects tariffs.
To Ottawa, and the race to be Canada's next prime minister is narrowing again with the withdrawal of two more big names. Former BC Premier Christy Clark and Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne have decided not to run. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
Good place to start the year with Champagne, no?
Francois-Philippe Champagne was seen as a strong Liberal leadership contender. As industry minister, he was well known in business circles, but he's opting to put his energy elsewhere.
I will dedicate my energy to defend Canada, to defend Canadians, to defend Canadian businesses. It was probably one of the most difficult decision in my life.
Champagne, who represents former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's old riding, would have had considerable Quebec support, something that Christy Clark lacked. In an email to supporters, the former BC Premier, who's not fluently bilingual, says she's not running because the 2-month race didn't give her enough time to effectively connect with Francophone Canadians. That leaves two big players, with the former Bank of Canada governor choosing to go on an American late-night comedy show to make the case for himself as an outsider.
Let's say the candidate wasn't part of the government. Let's say the candidate did have a lot of economic experience. Let's say the candidate did deal with crises. Let's say the candidate had a plan to deal with the challenges in the here and now.
Sources tell CTV News Mark Carney will officially announce he's running on Thursday in Edmonton. Meanwhile, Krista Freeland, who helped push the Prime Minister out with her scathing resignation, will launch her campaign before Donald Trump's inauguration with a plan for dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs in a looming trade war.
Today is a good day in the
Government House Leader Karina Gold will also put her name forward. The team behind the 37-year-old MP believes Gold can be the voice for young Liberals.
Sources tell CTV News that Karina Gold will announce her leadership bid later this week. The challenge for her will be fundraising the $350,000 entry fee required to compete. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
In the Middle East, Israel and Hamas are said to be at the closest point yet in agreeing to a ceasefire and hostage return. But mediators in Qatar are urging caution, saying the talks are continuing and there's no deal yet.
It is very important not to over or raise the expectations to a level that doesn't link to what's happening on the ground right now. We do believe that we are at a developed stage. We do believe that we are at the final stages, but obviously until there is an announcement, there will be no announcement. And therefore, we shouldn't be overexcited about what's happening right now. But certainly we are hopeful that this would lead very soon to an agreement.
The Qataris say the main issues between Israel and Hamas have been overcome, and discussions are now focusing on the final details. A draft agreement has been given to both sides, and two sources involved in the talks say Hamas has accepted it. And Israeli officials said progress has been made, but the details are being worked on. And for the families of the hostages taken from Israel more than 15 months ago, the prospect of a ceasefire has stirred up a wide range of emotions. As CTV's Raheem Ladani reports, there's hope their loved ones will safely return home.
Full of life, with musical aspirations, is how Agam Berger's family continue to remember her. However, this screen grab from a Hamas live stream is how they last saw her, kidnapped for more than 15 months.
You try not to imagine the worst things possible. You try not to, but you can't help it.
Ashley Waxman Bakshi grew up in Hamilton and moved to Israel to be with family. She says another hostage who has since been freed shared a story about her cousin, which keeps her optimistic.
She told her, the terrorist, I don't cook on Shabbat. It's against my religion. And so we kind of understood that she's really turning to faith and to God there.
According to Israeli officials, 251 hostages were taken during the October 7th attack. Some 100 people are still captive inside Gaza, and the military believes at least a third are dead. Not everyone, though, is in favor of a ceasefire. Israel's finance minister was scolded by angry families for opposing a deal. In the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, protests have erupted, with many against this tactic to end the war.
Any hostage deal will be detrimental to the ultimate victory in the war, and any release of terrorists that would have to come along with that is just an incentive for further hostage taking on behalf of the Arabs.
Romy Gonen is one of the hostages who was abducted from the Nova Music Festival. Her family in Toronto understands the mixed reaction, but wants the deal done.
If your sister, if your husband, if your grandparent was kidnapped, and not even in terrorists' hands, what would you do if they were kidnapped? You would do everything to get them back.
Hoping to put an end to the painful unknown. Rahim Ladani, CTV News.
Those impacted by the conflict in Gaza are also watching closely for word of a ceasefire agreement. CTV's Beth McDonnell spoke to people with loved ones in the region.
From her Mississauga warehouse, Nora Sharab is apprehensive about a ceasefire.
Unless it happens, we won't believe what's on the news.
Sharab is deeply connected to the conflict and Palestinian people. She runs a social enterprise with goods made by refugees in Jordan. She has dozens of relatives in Gaza and met with the Prime Minister in 2023, advocating on behalf of families.
A lot of us are sitting, I think, at the edge of our seats and are kind of really wary around feeling excited or happy. I think there's a lot of loss and mourning that's still happening.
Even with a ceasefire, she points to the destruction in Gaza. Shrab says this is her cousin's bedroom after it was bombed. And this is the neighborhood where her uncle and cousins now live. There are moments of hope, like finding this heart-shaped potato. But getting food, coping without electricity at night are just some of the layers to surviving here.
There's absolutely no proper livelihood. The sewage runs everywhere. You know, imagine garbage that hasn't been properly taken care of. Just thinking of that and thinking of the rebuilding, thinking of the rubble, thinking of people still under the rubble that have not been found, that's going to be another level of just recovery.
Natalia Camrina works with Sharab and is involved with the Palestinian protest movement. In her community, she too says there is uneasiness.
There were ceasefire talks with Lebanon, and then they were still bombing them. There's ceasefire talks now. There's people still being bombed. There's people still dying. So I think that optimism isn't really something that's on the table for a lot of us right now.
Without fighting, Shrab hopes she can finally get relatives out of danger. She applied to bring some to Canada, but nothing came of the process.
A ceasefire is just a ceasing in, the bombs falling down, but it does not mean that the people in Gaza have any sense of freedom. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done.
The ceasefire would be a positive step in a place where the future is still dark. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
To California, where crews from BC and Alberta are now on the ground joining the firefight at a critical moment.
Dangerous winds are expected to pick up, with 3 fires still burning in the Los Angeles area and millions of people on high alert. CTV's Andrew Johnson reports.
From hacking through the brush, carving fresh fire breaks, to blanketing areas at critical risk with flame retardant, Los Angeles County fire officials say they're ready for what's coming.
The worst winds are predicted today for the late afternoon and into Wednesday.
More than 12 million people are within the warning zone for winds that could top 100 kilometers per hour and fuel major fire growth.
If you get an alert on your telephone for an evacuation warning, leave then. Don't wait for the order.
Overnight, firefighters raced to get a quick handle on a new fire, dozens attacking it from the ground and in the air. The aerial water assault coming from helicopters belonging to British Columbia-based Coulson Aviation.
We did have an initial attack last night up in Ventura County that we caught a fire. So that was going to be a good catch for us.
And we are getting a first look today at Coulson's aerial firefight from inside their Chinook heavy lift helicopters. The helicopters have dropped millions of liters of water on the Los Angeles County fires.
We load 3,000 gallons in our belly in about a minute and a half.
And Wayne Coulson says attacking the fires 24 hours a day using night vision has been a game changer.
Firefighting at night is here to stay. The fact that if we had let this fire continue on during the evenings, it would have been probably twice the size it is now.
Quebec-based Super Scooper aircraft have also been a key firefighting tool. The plane, grounded after being damaged by a drone, is now back in service.
We don't really think about danger when we go up in the air. We just think about what we have to do.
With dangerous winds expected to peak into Wednesday, crews with Canadian ties say they're well rested and waiting for the call.
We're ready to rock and roll.
Andrew Johnson, CTV News.
In Washington, it was a contentious start today to the confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill. The first of Donald Trump's cabinet picks to face lawmakers was Defense Secretary and nominee Pete Hegseth.
Now, it is true and has been acknowledged that I don't have a similar biography to defense secretaries of the last 30 years. But as President Trump also told me, we've repeatedly placed people atop the Pentagon with supposedly the right credentials, whether they are retired generals, academics, or defense contractor executives. And where has it gotten us? He believes, and I humbly agree, that it's time to give someone with dust on his boots the helm, a change agent.
The former combat veteran vows to bring what he calls a warrior culture to the military if confirmed. Democratic members of the Senate Armed Services Committee said Hegseth lacks the necessary experience and grilled him about past comments concerning women troops and allegations of excessive drinking and sexual misconduct. Hegseth dismissed the accusations as a smear campaign.
In the UK, the Princess of Wales announced her cancer is in remission. Kate revealed the good news following a visit to the London hospital where she received treatment. The princess spent the day thanking staff and supporting other cancer patients. Later, she said it's a relief to be in remission and remains focused on recovery. She also thanked everyone who helped her and her husband as they went through the ups and downs of treatment and recovery. Kensington Palace says Kate will continue her gradual return to public engagements.
Coming up, gearing up for Canada's very first WNBA team. Toronto Temple merchandise is now available. We check out the inaugural pieces with a very fitting female-founded and Canadian approach.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, more turbulence in the airline industry. If you were hoping to find a deal, the ultra-low-cost airline Play is pulling out of Canada, leaving some passengers who already have tickets unsure what the future holds. I'll have that story just ahead.
So around here, the winds are going to ease somewhat for tomorrow. So while it's still going to be a cold day, it will hopefully be a little more comfortable. Still looking at a few flurries, and then it's a temperature roller coaster over the next little while. Mild for the weekend, and then perhaps extreme cold as we make our way into next week. A prolonged period. We'll take you through your 7-day forecast coming up.
Play Airlines has decided it will no longer fly in Canada, and the low-cost carrier will cease operations here in April.
The airline has been flying out of the Hamilton airport for almost 2 years, but now some passengers aren't sure if their tickets will be valid. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle and Nathan. Play is an airline that flies to Europe with a stop in Iceland, and it's had some of the lowest fares in that category. But with rising costs for airplanes, jet fuel, and staffing, it appears the airline is going to fly its planes somewhere else.
Play Airlines brought its business model to Canada less than 2 years ago. The discount carrier was flying out of Hamilton Airport with a stopover in Reykjavik, Iceland. Here, passengers could enjoy a visit to Iceland's largest city and get out to see its majestic countryside. But the discount carrier plans to stop its flights from Hamilton on April 22nd.
Over the years, we have not been very, very kind to the success of these ultra low-cost carriers.
John Graddick with McGill University says the low-cost carrier segment is facing increasing pressures with rising costs, inflation, and competition from other airlines. Lynx Airlines filed for creditor protection last year, and WestJet folded Swoop Airlines into its regular operations the year before. There's a long list of discount airlines that have tried and failed to operate in Canada. Ultra-low fares may be attractive to passengers, but it's a business model difficult for airlines to maintain.
They're not making a lot of money at that price because you're flying a fairly new airplane and you're burning a lot of fuel and you pay for your crew.
For passengers who already purchased tickets on Play Airlines, their travel plans may be up in the air.
My main concern is about passengers who have already booked tickets with them, and now these passengers need to be looked after by the airline.
Passenger rights advocate Gabor Lukash says it's not enough for Play to offer refunds if it cancels flights. He says passengers should be rebooked on other airlines at no additional charge.
Play, in this case, will have to rebook these passengers on its partner or competitor airlines because it already sold tickets to those passengers.
CTV News reached out to Play Airlines for comment but did not receive a response. However, while Play is ceasing operations in Canada, it's expected to continue its flights between Europe and Iceland. And if you currently have tickets with Play Airlines, the company should notify you soon about your flight status. Hamilton Airport confirmed Play is ending its service in April, but said it remains confident in the future of the Hamilton Airport. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
All right, today was just one of those days, freezing cold outside. You better bundle up, and if you work indoors, you're thankful.
Yeah, honestly, it'd be nice to fly somewhere warm because it's intensely cold. Luckily, the sunshine was really nice today, but you had to bundle up.
It's true. And, you know, thinking about people flying south, I'm looking at next week and the cold and seeing how this Arctic air is going to extend all the way down toward the Gulf of Mexico. So depending on where you're traveling to, you might not really be escaping the cold anyway. It's cold tonight. We are going to get mild again as we make our way into the weekend, but starting Sunday, in fact, starting Saturday night, cold Arctic air is going to invade once again. We felt it today, but yes, we did have the sunshine. It was beautiful out there at times if you were dressed for it. We are looking at some visuals from Ajax. This is Duffins Creek. And as Jessica mentioned a little bit earlier in the newscast, not a lot of ice going on around the Great Lakes, that's for sure. We're at 3.6% ice coverage on Lake Ontario right now, 7.5% ice coverage total. Of course, today's cold weather will help and next week's will too. And when these Great Lakes finally freeze over, we'll finally start to say goodbye to some of these lake effect bans we've been dealing with. Very cold across northern sections of the province. -9 degrees now here locally in Toronto, feeling like -18. And that's what it's forecast to feel like right through these overnight hours. The core temperature will fall to around -11. So back into the minus double digits once again. Now our average overnight low is around -10. So we're not too far off the mark there. Average daytime high is -2 degrees. Tomorrow we're still going to be below that. -5 for you in Stratford as well as Tillsonburg, -3 in the Burlington area. Might make it to -4 in Vaughan, as well as -5 degrees in Port Perry, -8 in Haliburton. Again, sun there, but going to be cold. Here's a look at our current satellite and radar, and I do want to draw your attention once again to this lake effect band. It is starting to sink a little bit further to the south, so impacting areas like Barrie and Collingwood right now. But Newmarket, Georgina, Uxbridge, all included in this winter weather travel advisory. Most areas about 5 centimeters of snow in the forecast for this evening. Some areas could, however, the further east you go into the Kawartha Lakes, may pick up about 15 centimeters. And then snow squall warnings remain in place for areas along the shorelines of Lake Huron as well as Georgian Bay. London, Ontario might get into some snow tomorrow as well as these winds change direction. And again, the lines start to oscillate and start to impact more isolated areas. Here's a look at tomorrow afternoon. So we will once again get a little bit of sun here locally. Cloud cover does take over and we see a chance of flurries once more for your Wednesday evening. Maybe a trace to 2 centimeters of snow on Thursday. Just a light dusting, but a little more widespread. And then heading into Friday, this is when the mild weather is going to move in. So seasonal for Thursday at -2, 0 on Friday, daytime high of 1 on Saturday. Could see some mixed precip as a result, but look at that overnight low, and then look at these temperatures next week. Tuesday's daytime high could be around -14 degrees. That's your look at the weather. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Still to come tonight, the Raptors pull out a win at home, and the Leafs and the Scepters are on the ice tonight. Your sports headlines next. They're not expected to hit the court for over a year, but excitement is building for Canada's first WNBA team.
Today, merchandise for the Toronto Tempo went on sale. Fans already gearing up to support the team. CTV's Andrea Case joins us live from Eaton Centre with the story. Andrea.
Michelle and Nathan, yes, it's actually May of 2026 before Toronto Tempo hit the court. But as of today, the inaugural season might be a while away, but the inaugural merchandise is available right now. Get ready to represent your team. The WNBA Toronto Tempo swag featuring the letter T with 6 lines representing 5 players on the court, the 6th being the fan, and of course 6 lines also represent the 6. Don't call the team colors burgundy and gray. Officially, they're Bordeaux and hydrogen blue. Okay, so is this all you'll be wearing now for like the next
100%. This is my entire wardrobe. I can't wait to sport Toronto Tempo from head to toe every single day of my life.
The Toronto Tempo won't tip off until May of 2026, but there's a lot to do between now and then, including picking a team in the draft this November. Until then, you can represent the Tempo with a hat, a t-shirt, a hoodie, and so much more.
We have give and grow planters that you can have for your house. We have keychains. We have flags. We have anything you can imagine. We have leathered goods. It's just a whole gamut. We have plush pillows. We have youth, like everything's online.
Roots is one of the official licensing partners, and if you don't want to head into a store, of course you can always shop online. But when you head to their site, you might find an item like this is already just about sold out. In addition to established stores like Roots, Sport Check, and Real Sports, and Fanatics, a lot of the licensees are Canadian and female-founded, with a focus on representation and supporting women. Round 21, Playa Society, The Give and Grow, and Sense by Faye. And for those who prefer to shop online, head to shop.torontotempo.com. And while the team doesn't have a broadcaster for the entire season yet, Sephora, the personal care and beauty products chain, has come on board as a team sponsor. More will surely follow. Okay, so depending on where you go, they have different merchandise available. For example, here at Roots, this sweatshirt here, you better save your pennies. It's $138, but I'm sure you'll get a lot of wear out of it. Reporting from Roots in the Eaton Centre, I'm Andrea Case. Go Toronto Tempo, go. I'll send it back to Nathan.
Can't wait. Thank you, Andrea. Toronto Maple Leafs are back on the ice tonight, hosting one of the top teams in the Western Conference.
So we'll see how they bounce back tonight, but it's kicked back to the line for Tyler Myers. He'll score!
The Leafs are hoping to get back into the win column after being shut out 3-0 by Vancouver on Saturday. Tonight, the Buds welcome Dallas to Scotiabank Arena. The Stars lost on Sunday, but won 7 in a row before that.
All the way ahead. Pulled in. Eldridge shoots. She scores! Jesse Eldridge, the game winner!
The Toronto Scepters are also in action tonight. The professional women's hockey team is taking on the Charge in Ottawa. It follows an overtime loss to the New York Sirens on Sunday.
Curry with the 3. Doesn't go. Long rebound to Chris.
The Raptors got a much-needed win at home against the Golden State Warriors last night. The game was close throughout, but the Raptors turned it on in the fourth quarter to secure the 104-101 victory. Scotty Barnes had 23 points, and Chris Boucher poured in 18, 17 of them in the final frame. It was Toronto's second win in their last 18 games. The Raptors' next game is at home against the Celtics on Wednesday.
Just ahead, Ottawa puts the brakes on electric vehicle rebates as the program hits a speed bump. We'll explain.
It could cost 500,000 jobs. This is serious. It's unprecedented.
Updating our top stories, the Premier warned about the potential impact of U.S. tariffs in Ontario. He was joined by the federal finance minister, who says Canada must respond in a firm, united way. The country's premiers will meet with the Prime Minister tomorrow to discuss the tariff threat.
A $5 increase each week, right? $5.20 increase on average.
Toronto's mayor was out defending a nearly 7% property tax increase in the proposed budget that was announced yesterday. The city says the revenue will help increase TTC service, add additional police, firefighters, and paramedics, and expand food programs for students.
No, ice is never 100% safe, especially when you're walking on it.
Toronto Fire is reminding people about the dangers of walking or skating on thin ice. There's been a mild start to the winter season with almost 0% ice coverage on Lake Ontario. Many of the ponds in the GTA are also low on ice coverage.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app.
Investors around the world are standing by for a crucial U.S. inflation report tomorrow morning. Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg has the details in business.
Hello there. Canadian and U.S. stocks eked out small gains today, but traders were worried that a U.S. inflation report tomorrow morning could send markets tumbling. News that U.S. prices are still rising faster than expected would make more interest rate cuts by the U.S. Federal Reserve less likely. And those rate reductions are seen as crucial fuel needed to send stocks higher. One market watcher said all eyes are on the Consumer Price Index report, which, quote, may be the most important inflation reading in recent memory. Drug giant Eli Lilly weighed on the U.S. market today after sales of its popular weight loss and diabetes shots disappointed investors again. In Canada, shares in BCE, parent of CTV and BNN Bloomberg, hit the lowest since 2010 after Bank of America cut the stock to sell, citing debt and questions over the dividend. The Canadian dollar changed hands at 69.65 U.S. cents, up 0.21 of a U.S. cent. West Texas Intermediate oil was at $76.37, down 93 cents. Western Canadian Select Oil changed hands by our latest quote at $64.71, up $1.35. And the TSX Composite ended at 24,588.58, up just over 52 points. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
The federal government has abruptly paused a program that offered rebates on electric vehicles.
I'm getting phone calls from dealers and manufacturers. Everybody's stunned to see how sudden this has been. And I'm not impressed. To tell you the truth, I'm not impressed with the way this has been handled.
The program was supposed to last until March 31st, but Transport Canada says a surge in interest has led to available funds running out sooner than anticipated. They're calling it a huge success and noted offered rebates to more than 546,000 vehicles. Since 2019, the program has offered drivers a rebate of up to $5,000 for new light-duty electric vehicles. Subsidies for medium and heavy-duty EVs will still be offered.
Meantime, a recent survey suggests a lack of reliable and convenient chargers is the biggest obstacle Canadians face when thinking about buying an electric vehicle. The poll from CAA found those who already own an EV expressed concern about lack of reliable charging stations on longer journeys, as well as poor battery performance in cold weather. However, the survey found 9 out of 10 EV owners planned on buying another EV when it comes time to replace their current vehicle.
Some extra money is set to make its way to the wallets of Canadians tomorrow. The first of 4 carbon rebate payments are being sent out. People living in Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and all 4 Atlantic provinces will receive the payment if they filed their 2023 taxes. These are issued every 3 months, with the next payment slated in April, July, and October. There's more information on the credit on our website.
Opponents of the province's plan to build a spa at Ontario Place are raising new concerns about pollution, noting a proposed sewer outlet could lead to water contamination.
Sometimes when there's large rainfall, that combined sewage will be emptying into this closed water space right behind us here at Ontario Place and down. It means all of the amenities, all of the public access to the beach, Sunnyside Beach, one of the most popular beaches in the city, could be polluted from dumping raw sewage in behind this breakwater.
The recent estimates from the province's Auditor General say redeveloping Ontario Place will now cost $2.2 billion. The report also found the bidding process for the Therma Spa lacked accountability and transparency.
Just ahead, an artist's long-awaited vision on the verge of coming to fruition, why a little red model house is on its way to the surface of the moon. And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special shout out to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010. NASA is set to return humans to the moon in 2027.
But a well-traveled piece of art is going to beat the astronauts to the lunar surface. This little red house will be launched into space on Wednesday. And if all goes according to plan, it'll be put on the surface of our celestial neighbor after getting a ride on a Japanese lunar lander. The house was created by the Swedish artist who's been trying to put it on the moon for 25 years, and now he can't believe it's finally happening. The moon house has been in orbit before at the International Space Station. Who would have thought?
It'll be the moon's first official tourist attraction.
Yes.
Cool.
It'll probably look pretty tiny, though, on the moon, wouldn't you say?
I know. He was asked, why do you do this? Art. So that's the reason. Interesting.
Well, there you go.
Anyways, what's nature painting for us today? What's the picture?
Well, another cold night, and we once again have some snow impacting parts of the GTA. This is mainly for northern York region and northern Durham region. Here's one more look at the satellite and radar and the current temperature, which is, you know, once again, around -9 degrees at Pearson Airport, feeling like -18. We've got snow from Collingwood over towards Stayner, Barrie, impacting areas like Sutton as well. And about 5 centimeters could fall in those areas under the winter weather travel advisory. -11, our forecast low overnight tonight. We are going to get a little bit warmer over the coming days as we inch toward the weekend, but there's one more look at the cold air that invades for next week. Nathan and Michelle.
Those are some big numbers. Thank you, Lindsay. That's it for us, but be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here at CTV News, thanks for watching. Have a great night.